I've been asking myself the question a lot recently, what is personal development? And I've come to the conclusion that it's probably not the same thing for everybody, because personal development's a journey, it's not a destination. And as we're all at a different place on that journey, the answer to that question is probably different to all of us. But I think there are some key stages that most people will go through. And I thought I'd share with you some of my ideas on what some of those stages are. Most people start off by reading books, and this is a great place to start. Often this can be because someone's recommended a particular book to them, or perhaps because somebody that they know and trust has talked to them about the idea of personal development, and they figure that reading a book's probably a good place to get into it, and it absolutely is. So in the notes to this video, I'll share with you some of my personal favourite books from along my journey. Some will be from very early on, some of the early books that I read, and some from a lot more recently. So they'll cover a whole spectrum of my personal journey. Some of the books you'll have come across before, and some won't. Hopefully you'll find something interesting or useful in there for you. For some people, that's as far as it goes. They read the books and they find something interesting there, and they don't really take it any further, and that's okay. They've expanded their mind a little bit. Some people go on to the next stage, which is taking some of the ideas that they're reading about in these books and starting to try them on for size, starting to apply them in their own life and see how it works for them. To me, it's the next stage where things get really exciting. This is where we take the learner plates off the car, we've shed off the water wings, and we start getting into real personal development. That doesn't mean stop reading the books. Once you start reading the books, this is something that it's a habit that you've got to keep doing for life. And that's because these books contain the basic principles. These are universal truths, things that are true for everybody. No matter what you want to do with your life, there are certain things that are true. One of those is that if you want to get along in life, you're going to find it a lot easier if you're the kind of person that other people find it easy to be around. Now, there are exceptions to that, of course. We all know people who've been very successful in life and they're complete idiots and it's really hard to get along with them. But it's true for most people that the easier it is for people to get along with us, the easier we'll find our path through life. These are the basics, and this is why we need to keep reading personal development books, to keep reminding ourselves of the basics. There's a phrase that I really love, and I've got it printed out on my notice board to remind myself every day. And that simply says, if you want to become a master, you've got to master the basics. It's not constantly learning new stuff, learning more and more and more stuff. It's about taking the universal principles of life and applying them over and over again till they really become part of us. There's another saying that I really like that originates from the Shaolin temples in ancient China. This is something that the Kung Fu masters used to say. I'm not afraid of the man who's learned 10,000 punches and practiced them one time each. But I am definitely afraid of the man who's learned one punch and practiced it 10,000 times. And that's true with the basics of personal development. We need to take the simple principles and just apply them over and over again. That's how we develop. So what is personal development? And to me, if you sum it up in one sentence, it's simply about trying to be a better person today than I was yesterday, and applying that over and over again. So I'm going to take the next stage of personal development and compare it to something that happens in businesses. When businesses want change, they want something to be different, which is after all what personal development is. It's us wanting us to be different. They apply a very simple model, which is called the gap analysis. A gap analysis on the surface is very, very simple. It can get quite deep underneath the surface, but essentially it's very, very simple. And we ask ourselves the questions, what do I want? And we put that in a frame over here. And then we ask ourselves, what is the current reality? And we put that in a frame over here. And then we have to decide what is the gap between reality and what we want. What are the differences? And what do we need to put in place to move from one place to the other? That's what personal development is. It's just applying the gap analysis to ourselves. Who are we? Who do we want to be? What is the reality of who we are now, and how do we move from there to there? It's very simple. But like a lot of things, the very simple is not always easy to apply. So applying the gap analysis to personal development, let's start out with the what do I want at the end of it? And what we're really asking there is, who do I want to be as a person? How do I want to show up in life? How do I want to respond in certain situations? Another way to describe that would be to call it your self-image. Now, whether you know it or not, you have a self-image. A lot of people are not aware of what theirs is though. And a lot of people, unfortunately, have a negative self-image that's a hangover from previous experiences in life. The good news is though, you don't have to keep that. Imagine if that was a real picture, a painting painted on canvas. If you don't like that picture, all you've got to do is paint over it. And it's exactly the same with our self-image. Whatever it is currently, we can just start again and we can ask ourselves the question, what do I want? Who do I want to be? How do I want to respond in different situations? And we can start to build up this picture of the person who we want to become. And that is a very deep question, and it's not a one-time question. This is something that we need to keep asking ourselves over and over again. Who do I want to be? How do I want other people to perceive me? How do I want to show up in relationships? How do I want to show up in my work or my business? How do I show up in life? Once we have that, we need to figure out, what do we already have? What is the reality? And if there are a few pitfalls here that we need to be aware of. The first thing that we need to do is learn to be very honest with ourselves and almost detach ourselves from that picture. Because there will be times when we don't live up to our expectations of ourselves, and it's very easy to get into beating yourself up over that. And actually what can happen a lot of the time is we can pretend that it didn't happen until we develop that self-awareness and that honesty. Because let's say, for example, that part of my self-image is that I'm a very patient people, I'm very calm with people, I'm very measured. The reality might be that I come home from work after having a horrible day at work and the journey's been nasty, and I get home and I'm short-tempered with people. It's very easy at that point to blame other people. Well, it's not my fault. If I hadn't had this terrible day at work, if I hadn't had this horrible journey home, then I would have had more patience. That's blaming other people. It's not taking responsibility. And it's very easy to put blinkers on and pretend that that didn't happen. So a really important stage of this is being honest with ourselves. And it can be uncomfortable, but this is what we have to go through if we want to get that reality picture of what is actually happening, and we want to be able to make changes. Another pitfall that we need to be aware of, if we start looking for our shortfalls, we can get blinkered and we can start to notice only our shortfalls. If I sometimes am short with people and don't respond in the way that I want to, I can start to notice very easily all of the times that I do that. And if I'm not careful, I stop noticing the 7 times out of 10 when I respond exactly the way that I want to in line with my self-image, and I just notice the 3 times that I didn't. And it can become a really easily become an exercise in painting a really negative picture of myself. You have to be very careful about that and getting a balanced picture, because you have strengths, you have good points, you have some other points that you'd like to change, but when you're creating that reality frame where you are now, you need to make sure that that's balanced. And the last of the pitfalls that I want to talk about now is staying very emotionally detached from that. Because we're creating this image of who we want to be as a person. Once we've created this one, we're going to notice, if we're human beings and we're being honest with ourselves, there are times when we don't live up to that. And it can be quite easy to get into a mindset of, well, maybe I just can't get there. Maybe that's not me really anyway. Maybe I'm not quite as good as I thought I was. And it can be easy to get down into that spiral if we start believing that this is the reality. The mindset needs to be that if we can imagine this, we can become it. Whatever the mind can conceive and bring itself to believe, it can achieve. We can achieve whatever we want to. So if we have the capability to imagine that person, we can become that person. So now we've got the aspiration, the person that we want to be, and we've got the reality of who we are now. All we need to do is figure out how to move from there to there. Now, if you've set your sights high, and I really hope that you have done, you probably can't get from there to there. But what you probably can do, or what you definitely can do, is you can move from here to here. And if you can move from here to here, you can move to there, and you can move to there, and you can get there in little steps. And there are a few strategies that you can adopt here. One strategy would be to pick an area of your life and to work on that for a little while. to work on my patience, to decide, maybe start a little project of how do I learn to become a more patient person. Then this is where it starts to become really personal, and you need to start asking yourself the questions, how can I learn to become a more patient person? And you might have to go out and do some research on that, learn about lots of different techniques and try them all on and figure out which ones work for you. What in your mindset do you need to change in order to become a more patient person? And nobody can give you answers for these kinds of questions. Sometimes having someone on the journey can help you find them, but these are things that you have to find inside. This is why it's called personal development, not general development. Another strategy is to really develop self-awareness in the moment. For example, if I come home from work after having a horrible day and a bad journey, and I come home and I'm short with somebody at home, I need to be able to recognise that. I need to be able to change my behaviour in the moment, but I also need to remember that so that next time I'm doing some self-reflection, I can ask myself, what exactly happened there? What was the build-up to it? And how can I do it differently next time? And the build-up might simply be that I had a horrible day at work. I was getting wound up about things that were going on. The journey on the way home was terrible, and I was getting even more wound up, and I brought that into the house with me. My fuse was short. Somebody said something that was perfectly innocent, and I snapped about it. What we need to be able to do is kind of backtrack on that and say, where can I make a change? And the change in that scenario might be, first of all, I need to be able to notice what are the signs of when I start to get wound up like that, and what strategies can I put in place to get myself out of that state and into a better state. As I've already said, when you find out your own ways to do that, that's going to be the most powerful, most effective way. But as an idea, there's somebody who I know who, when they come home from work, they've got a plant inside the door, and as they come in, they rub the leaves of the plant, and that is just to remind them that all of that stuff that's happened during the day has gone, and they're now at home with the people that they love, and they make a decision at that point how they're going to be, how they're going to show up in that relationship. So 3 stages of personal development are: stage 1, read personal development books over and over again. It opens your mind, it feeds it with positive information, and it gives you more ideas and reinforces ideas over and over again. Stage 2 is read personal development books and start to apply the ideas in there. Try them on for size. How can I take this? How can I make it work in my life? How can I make my life better because of what I'm reading here, because of what I'm learning? Stage 3 is when you learn how to do a gap analysis on yourself to figure out, who do I want to be? When you start to create that picture, not just accepting the self-image that you've grown up with, that was given to you by other people. When you start to create your own self-image, and then you start to have the self-awareness and the honesty to figure out what is the reality, and then through a process of self-reflection and reading and studying and talking to other people, you can figure out what is the gap and how do I bridge that gap? How do I move from here to there? 10 years ago, I didn't even know there was a stage 1. I didn't know that personal development existed. I didn't know these books existed. I didn't know there was universal principles of life that apply to everybody. Once I got into stage 1, once I started to learn about that, suddenly stage 2 started to open up in front of me, and I realised that that was there. Once I started to move into stage 2, off in the distance, I started to get this glimpse of stage 3 and started to understand what that was. And once I'd started to move into stage 3, guess what happens next? Have you started to guess what's going to happen at stage 4 as you started to open up for you? Or maybe you're at that stage, maybe you're beyond that stage, because that's what I find mind-blowing about this. What is beyond stage 4 and 5? What is beyond stage 7 and 10? How many stages are there? And if you know the answer to any of these questions, please let me know, because I'm dying to find out.